The Ministry of Environment and Climate Change has envisioned a transformative shift in Sierra Leone's trajectory on sustainability and conservation, knowing that the current path of the country is on unsustainability and unsustainable. Earlier this year, the ministry and partners hosted a regional forum which brought together communities from across the country to align the vision and set priorities. These discussions have been culminated in the upcoming national event, the National Forest and Climate Forum, which will take place on the 18th of March onwards. This will serve as a platform to launch the Protect Sierra Leone vision. The event is also designed to introduce to the public the ministry's comprehensive agenda and to set the stage for achieving the ambitious conservation climate goals. The event will also feature 3 days of intensive working sessions where stakeholders will collaborate to move the ministry's vision for ideation to implementation. The Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Jiwoh Abdulai, is with us in the studio this morning to discuss about all of that and some of the work his ministry has been carrying out. Good morning to you and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So to lay the premises, you might want to tell us a bit about some of the works that you have been doing before we come to the purpose of why you're here.
Well, the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change is tasked with environmental issues and climate issues that affect the country. I mean, globally, not just Sierra Leone, but other countries are facing what we call the triple planetary crisis. Climate change is a major one. Biodiversity loss is another one, and pollution. So the Ministry of Climate Change, of Environment and Climate Change in Sierra Leone is really responsible for setting policy to address these issues, which are global, but from a Sierra Leone context. What we've been doing in the past is just, put the foundational building blocks in place, and now we want to launch it so that the country as a whole can come in to help to resolve these issues that we face.
Sierra Leone has lost a major forest cover in recent years, and which reports indicates that Sierra Leone happens to be, or West Africa happens to have one of the highest deforestation. Now, can you at least in detail be specific about the measures your ministry have taken to reverse this trend, and how will the National Forum for Climate address, these gaps?
Yeah, and the reality is the current path is not sustainable. At the rate we're going, we will lose most of our forest, all of our forests within our lifetimes. And that's why the ministry is treating this with urgency, because for the ministry and not just the ministry and the government, but for the people of Sierra Leone, these are existential issues. If we lose our forests, it affects our lives in multiple ways. But at the basic level, it affects water security. It affects our ability to grow our food, which means that it will affect our ability to exist in Sierra Leone, and that's why we are treating this as a matter of urgency. So the first thing we did in January was to go around and have regional consultations just to get buy-in from people that lead the local communities, especially the paramount chiefs, all 190 paramount chiefs, the local councils. The reason being that they're the ones closest to these problems, and we wanted them not just to buy in the idea that we really need to halt the deforestation at the rate it's going, but also restore degraded lands. We also wanted them to take ownership. The idea here is that at the local level, our traditional leaders, our community leaders, the local council will take ownership of this. The ministry will set policy, and the ministry will then, try to get resources that will be allocated to the traditional leaders and the local councils to really tackle these issues. Because environment issues, climate issues, deforestation or biodiversity issues are all local issues, and the solutions have to be local.
Let's speak to the issue of encroachment. Places like the Gola for rainforest, places like Takugama, they have been complaining. Just this morning we were discussing about Takugama almost shutting down because of some of those issues. What strategy is your ministry implementing in order to balance community needs with conservation?
And that's really the crux of not just the regional consultations, but the national forum. These forests, these natural assets, and it's not just forests. So when we talk about natural assets, we're talking about land and sea. Because, let's not forget that 80% of the protein that we consume comes from fish or marine resources that live in the seas. So we need to protect land and sea so that we can exist in this country. Our approach really is about starting at the local level, right? Because that's where, if you support local, if you support people at the local level, you can address these issues. So let's start. What we started, even before we did the regionals, for Western area, because Western area has really been a wake-up call. The Western area park is where our primary source of water is for Freetown, and without that, it's going to be very difficult for Freetown, for life to exist in Freetown. When we started, we had town halls, and in those town halls, we brought the headmen from the communities. We brought the local council, and we engaged them. And when I say we, I mean MDAs across government, so land, Ministry of Lands, Environment, Tourism, Ministry of Water Resources, because this cuts across. We engaged them just to see how we can start addressing these issues, because we know that these resources are for our, we're going to continue using them. What matters is not that we're not going to stop people from using these resources. What we want is the use to be sustainable over a long period of time. These are resources that we inherited from our ancestors, and we ideally want to pass it down to future generations. So it's about finding the balance. Like, how do we exploit these resources, but how do we also do it in a sustainable way so that we don't deplete them, over a generation. That's the balance that we're trying to find. So in this forum, for these working sessions, we have multiple themes. We have a theme for the big landscapes, so like Western Area Peninsula National Park, you have Gola, you have Altama Kilmi, these all across the country. How do we link some of these together so that it's bigger scale? And the reason is we want to attract big players in this space. There's some realities we have to face, like, the model that we've used in the past hasn't worked. So what we want to do is attract big players in the conservation space to come to Sierra Leone. And when they come, usually they come with their funding, they come with their technical expertise, and then they have a partnership with the communities and the government to protect these areas. Now, protection doesn't mean that the people that live in these forest areas can no longer have a livelihood in the forest areas. It actually means that we will try to create alternative livelihoods for them. That would mean that the relationship that they have now, which in many cases is destructive, is transformed into a relationship where protecting the natural assets is beneficial to them. So, the reason we're having these working sessions, and we're bringing the paramount chiefs in, we're bringing the local government people, we have CSOs that are going to be there, we have the partners who are coming in who are interested in this space, is let's work through these problems. Let's start off a conversation and then let's come up with a plan that we'll try to then implement over the next 5 years. Because our goal really is to transform not just the big landscapes, but the community forest and the marine resources by 2030, to have that in a state wherein they're protected and we can exploit these resources in a sustainable way.
So, Minister, your office is quite new, established in 2019. At first, I was actually quite hopeful of the many changes that perhaps would have happened before now. But the reality is, a blind man cannot sweep clean. Cannot even sweep, because you cannot see clearly. The analogy I'm making is, in most cases, if you ask people around, they will tell you some of the most audacious encroachment we've seen in recent time is coming from people who are white placed, highly placed in society. Let's say the politicians themselves. So if you ask Bala, he would tell you he was here the last time. He almost cried where you are sitting exactly when he was narrating how confrontational, government officials, who send these quote-unquote errand boys to deflower, his virgin forest around the Takugama sanctuary, and how, heated he has had it with these guys who come on a daily basis. Most of them come with armed men, officials, with guns, to threaten. He almost closed the place recently until, in fact, through the grace of God and the Ministry of Tourism intervened. But you were nowhere to be found in the picture when these breezing, encroachments were ongoing around Takugama. And there is a very big dam there, as you've said just now, that controls water, that supplies huge quantity of water across, perhaps a fraction of the city. The reality is that you've not been much in the picture, Mr. Minister. Your ministry is perhaps submerged, in a whole lot of, I don't know what to say or call it, really, but you've not been quite formidable, well, as I had hoped.
I think when you're trying to solve a problem, there are many ways to do it. You can just solve it on the surface, or you can actually try to start from the root of the problem to solve it. I mean, Bala and I are in communications all the time. So I am usually briefed on issues. And in fact, if you really question Bala a lot, he will also tell you that many times when he has these encroachments, he'll reach out to the NPAA, which is one of the agencies supervised by the ministry, and the NPAA would send people there to try to help him out with these issues. He'll also tell you that the last issue that he was complaining about, when the NPAA guards went there, they were attacked by these people who are encroaching.
So you see?
So again, that's why it's important. That's why I come on these stations.
So who's in charge
every
of
once
that?
in a while, so that people can understand the nature, like what this problem is. You're absolutely right. There is a culture of impunity in this country, but one thing that the people of Sierra Leone should understand. And I don't say this just because I'm the Minister of the Environment. At the level of the presidency, the political will is there to address these issues. You would see that someone built a house like in less than 3 weeks. There were multiple stories going up. That same Takugama, by the road going up there, which was alarming, because there's this perception that if you just build it real quickly, then no one would try to demolish it. But if you go to that same place today, you would see that there's a demolition exercise going. Now, to really address this, we can't do the whack-a-mole, where you build, we demolish, we build, we demolish, because many times, by the time you're building, you've already done some destruction. And then it's really costly to demolish. So we're trying to address this at the root of the problem, and have sanctions in place. Myself and the Attorney General have had many conversations about what's the best way to make the cost of these encroachments so high that people would be deterred from encroaching in the first place. Right?
That means that we have laws already. But some people mention
exactly.
policy reforms. I just shiver, because we have a Bible of laws in Sierra Leone. There's a whole library of these beautiful. I would tell Sierra Leone has
and it's about
some
enforcement.
of the most beautiful laws.
So you would want to say the enforcement is kind of
these
weak?
law bites is the question, because the guys who do these things are quite protected politically. You cannot touch them. That's the thing, even as a minister.
Well, and that's the perception. So we have the laws.
Okay.
Enforcement has been the problem. I mean, that's clear as day. Anyone can see it. When it comes to encroachment, there are different kinds of encroachment. But I assume the one we're talking about here is Freetown, because that's what everyone sees. The encroachment that happens in Freetown usually happens by people who either have the resources or things that are so well placed that they
cannot be touched.
They can't be touched. But for society to really function, we can't have laws that differentiate, based on your political party or the office you hold, or your income or wealth level. Like, laws should be across the board.
Okay.
So when it comes to enforcement, the conversations that we've had with the Attorney General is about having a special court for the environment and land, or I mean, I think there already was one, but allocating resources or allocating judges to that, so that we can fast track a lot of these cases, because that's the only way you can deter. Like the demolition. Yes, the demolition. You can demolish houses, but what we want is to stop the encroachment from happening in the first place. And the only way to do that is to make the cost of encroaching very high.
Very high.
And the path that we're using for that, and again, there are multiple paths here, to make that cost so high is the legal process. So part of that is getting the courts in place so that we can start prosecuting these cases there.
It's a fine idea, Mr. Minister, but the problem with that as well, I'll tell you, because just the day before yesterday, or the day before that, there was a gentleman from the judiciary of Sierra Leone who told us on this very set that they were grossly financially challenged. They cannot even afford computers. Talking of, giving birth to another court that will be addressing environmental issues. Right. So you see, they themselves have said that they don't have money even to run the place. They don't have projectors in these courtrooms. They are challenged with judges, money to pay these people, to run the courts. It's a whole ball game. Justice is expensive, that's the thing. And they've said that they're not getting much from the government. So they too are challenged. So you see, we're in this cycle of or basking in this, if I should say, this impecunious water of, challenges in Sierra Leone. And it seems not to be solving, because every day, now you're turning to the judiciary, you're quite right. It could have been perhaps a solution to this. But they too are challenged. They don't have money. And now, if you say that, as beautiful as your plan sounds, you'll be adding more pressure on the judiciary, you understand, because they too cannot even survive. They don't have computers, as the young man said. And by the way, I hope you understand that they are going through what we call even some serious corruption scandals at the moment. Some of their people are being investigated. That's the kind of country we live in, Mr. Minister.
Well, I mean,
I feel pity for you, though, because I'm sure you're a nice person. You want to enforce the changes. But the environment is not giving you the will to do it. Another thing that I did in December that I would like to draw your attention to is I did a documentary around, methane deposits in the atmosphere and carbon emissions in Freetown, which is becoming gradually alarming. Now, a lot of people do not talk about this because maybe they don't care, but I'm sure you care, you understand, about the environment. And so one thing that I've noticed is the huge carbon deposits in the atmosphere. Everywhere you go across Freetown now, there is some sort of haze hanging on the sky. The sky is always blue, not because the sky is beautiful, but these things are smoke. There are plumes of smoke emitted from cars, unchecked vehicles, road unworthy trucks that ply our streets, you understand, that cause
Even
terrible
people in
smokes
communities
in the atmosphere,
that do just burn.
indecent cooking with charcoal and wood and all of these things, and the many dump sites we've had littered across the city. In every dump site you now go, some of those are illegal dump sites, by the way, that are formed by communities, you understand. They are burning dirt. And all of these smoke is just settling in the air, giving rise to cases of cancer. You know, women go to birth with deformed, you know, abnormalities and all these kinds of things, Mr. Minister. But I've not heard you quite much on that since that documentary was released in December.
Well, let me unpack, because you've
Yeah,
you've put a lot of things here, and it's very important that you unpack these things so that people understand. As you rightly said, you know, I think you sort of answer your question. You ask a question and then you answer it a few minutes later. The judiciary costs money to have a justice system. It costs, like protecting nature costs a lot of money. And, you know, even the demolitions that you're seeing, it costs a lot of money. With the program that we've put in place, right, to protect the forest, the parks, to restore the community forest, to protect the oceans. When we've costed that, that's $700–800 million by 2030.
Wow.
That's not going to come from the Treasury, right? Which is why we're having a conference like this. We're having a conference like this because we have to accept reality that where we are today, we cannot continue down that path, right? And we need to take, you know, like bold action. We need to go out there, engage people and say, here's where we are, here's what we want to do. These are the sort of partnerships that we want. These are our funding requirements. Otherwise, we can just, you know, we can sit here, we can complain, and things will keep getting worse and worse and worse. I wouldn't say I pity me. I would say here's an opportunity for my generation to address this problem head on so that my children don't have to deal with this.
Sure.
Right? I mean, if you say, well, that problem is too much, it's too big a problem, I can't deal with it, who's going to solve it? You know, we are the ones that have to look at these problems and solve them. With respect to the CO2, I mean, part of this is, one of the themes is going to be one of our agencies talking about the NDCs, which is the National Determined Contributions that we're currently working on, where we look at emissions across the board, right? And we do a comprehensive you know, greenhouse gas inventory, right? So we know, okay, you're emitting this from, you know, from the bushfires. You're emitting this from industrial activity. You're emitting this from, you know, power generation. You're emitting this from transport, and then like really a really thorough one, and then we can start addressing how we can reduce our emissions. Having said that, the reality is that Sierra Leone as a whole, we don't emit much, right? Yeah. And that's really one of the tragedies, that even though we don't emit much, the effects of climate change really affects us disproportionately. Indeed. And it affects, you know, those that even within Sierra Leone, those in society who have who are least positioned to be able to deal with it. But having said all of that, as a government, as a country, you can't just sit back and say, well, you know, we can't do anything about this. We have to tackle these problems head on. We have to tackle the pollution problems. We have to tackle the deforestation problems. We have to tackle the climate problems. Because if we say we're not going to do anything about that, in 10 to 20 years, this place will be unlivable.
In just a minute, if it's possible, let's just speak a little on the National Forest and Climate Forum. I mean, basically, this kind of aims to address these crises of which you're talking about. But what concrete, time-bound, and some of the outcomes are you prioritizing from this event, and how will the public hold, government accountable for delivering on these communities?
So we have a target of 2030. right, as a country, to address a lot of these the issues that we'll be discussing. So, you know, we have multiple themes here. So you have the integrated landscapes, you have community forests, because, you know, a lot of the deforestation happens in our community forests, right? The slash and burn farming, the charcoal production, you know, the illegal timber, you know, and then like those little, you know, they call it fence stick.
Fence stick, yeah.
They're not even allowed to grow, right? So we have to address these problems. And by address, I mean, okay, here's where we are right now. Let's really think about alternatives to the way we're operating right now, right? Because, you know, there's some realities. You can't ban charcoal today, right? Because people in the cities need to cook. But let's have a conversation about how can we have more efficient cook stoves, maybe, that reduce the amount of charcoal you use for cooking. We have people who create these cook stoves now. How can we make these cook stoves more available? How can we make it more affordable? Let's have
but they do have these coals that they do make now.
Yes.
Yeah, they do have this specific coals. Yeah, you just heat them up, and it doesn't.
That's the next thing. Let's talk about alternative ways of creating this charcoal, wherein people don't go in and cut the primary forest, right? All of these, and it's not just about these conversations. Let's cost it. Let's see how much it's going to cost. Let's have a plan for it, and this is going to be public, right? And then let's track the progress that we make towards achieving these. So that's just an example. Same thing for fishing, right? Let's have a plan for increasing the protection of the mangroves. You know, the Ministry of Fisheries has programs where communities are going to be managing the areas where the fishermen are, and they have all these beautiful programs. You know, let's cost it. Right. Let's have a plan for implementing this by a specific timeline, and then let's track it. Right? We can't continue dealing with these things at just the surface. Right? You deal with it at the surface, it just persists over time, and you never really address it. Let's go to the root of the problems. Yes, it will take time, but if you go to the root of the problems and you address it long term and have a plan for addressing it long term, then we can start dealing with these on a permanent basis instead of on a temporal basis. And then, you know, in 5 to 10 years, you know, we can reverse the trend, and hopefully, you know, by the time our kids come up, they don't have to deal with the same issues that we're dealing with.
So, Minister, just in the same spirit, lastly for me, the same spirit of, you know, addressing things at the subterranean level, as you've said. Another thing that I've noticed, you know, with disgust is the breezing nature at which, you know, building permits are issued in this country. Now, it's going to be a very big problem for you, not only you, but the country as a whole. You know, so land just gives these things to people. They are bought now. You know, there's breezing or alarming corruption happening around that ministry because. For instance, the house that you talked about earlier that was being built at Takogama there, along the road, you know, had obtained a permit from Ministry of Lands. What precludes or stops the Ministry of Lands from, you know, doing a visibility study to ask this person who is seeking this permit, oh, you know what, why are you going to build this house? Can you go there and see? But if you ask them to, they will tell you that they are challenged. They don't have finances. I think it was last year or so, around November, or October also in the year, that we received 2 of their staff who came here and told us that they were grossly challenged. And the reason why they've not been going to the site to monitor is because they don't have bikes, they don't have transport, they don't have mobility to do these things. Just, I think, 2 weeks ago, the mayor of Freetown was on this very couch that you're sitting, and she was telling us that, you know, there's been a protracted problem between where she heads and the Ministry of Lands regarding issues of building permit in Freetown, when ideally it should be collaborative, you know, the Ministry of Lands and City Council, the Ministry of Environment, that should be, you know, unanimously deciding who to give these building permits to. It's a problem, Mr. Minister. How can this be solved? Briefly before we go.
I mean, I think we have to be realistic a little bit here. I'm the Minister of the Environment. I can't solve all the problems across the country.
No, I understand,
but now,
it's what
we do at the ministry is for cross-cutting issues. We work closely with other MDAs and with local governments. Right?
In this regard, have you been working closely?
If you do
otherwise that guy wouldn't have built there.
But if you go to the demolition site, you'll see Ministry of Lands there, right? Everywhere we do any demolition, the Ministry of Lands is there. One thing to keep in mind, when it comes to documentation in this country, you'll be amazed at the people will show documents to you that are not real, that are fake. I've seen it. You know, we did demolitions at the, again, without going into the specifics of a particular case, I've seen cases where, you know, people come with documents, they say, you know, this is from the Ministry of Lands. And it's for that reason, when we do the demolitions, senior people at the director level or even a minister from the Ministry of Lands is there. So when you bring your documents, we say, you know, go to them so that they can verify it. Because we at the Ministry of Environment cannot verify these documents. And you'd be amazed how many times people come with documents that are fake. Well, now, one of the things that, you know, I mentioned, you know, having conversation with the Attorney General is when we're talking about the sanctions and making the cost of these encroachments very high, it's not just the people who are going to build there. It's the entire syndicate that causes, whether you are the surveyor, you know, the people in the Ministry of Lands, because people ought to know, you know, these parks have boundaries which have GPS coordinates.
Yes.
I mean, I can, in my phone now, give you just a simple file that you can then tell what the boundary of the Western Air Peninsula National Park is. If you start prosecuting people, the surveyors, you start prosecuting the people at the Ministry of Land, you start prosecuting people who sell.
Do you think it's possible to prosecute people at the Ministry of Land?
Yeah, why not?
It sounds American to me. I mean, the realities here are different, you know, Mr. Minister.
Yeah, but, you know, America was not that great if you look 50, 60 years ago. It's the people there. It's the people there that put the structures in place so that they can live the life that they live now. Okay. You know, we need to, I think, one of the things, I mean, from my point of view that I'm really trying to push, right, is that...
You have barely 3 years, Mr. Minister. Doesn't matter.
Well, I'm not going to solve all the problems.
Of course.
What you do is, you know, it's you put the foundation in place so that others can build. Just like my predecessor, you know, I am building...
Perhaps you should be hopeful that you would continue after the 3 years, maybe.
Oh no!
If you happen to win the election,
it's a tough job. Like, you know, I can't.
Okay,
you know, my beard, the color of this was the same as yours before I joined.
So let's just hold you there for a minute.
So I'll do my part, and then I'll leave it. But what I want to do is have a solid foundation and a plan in place. We'll start implementing it, so that whoever comes after me just needs to build.
There's a roadmap. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Let's just take one message or two from our Facebook audience, and maybe also you might want to respond to that in just a minute because we're about to join outside broadcast. Now, Osam Conte says the indisciplined behavior of Sierra Leoneans has made it difficult for every government to fully succeed that will change the lives of all. Unless Sierra Leoneans develop a positive attitude, embrace patriotism, love for one another, then a better Sierra Leone will be for all. Lastly, Swissman says, Minister, the law is blind in Sierra Leone. Most of the time we're seeing governments are the ones conducting demolition on poor people who construct houses in some communities or government land, but when government officials are constructing their houses in some of those areas, they will prefer to demolish the house of the poor people and leave those who belong in the political chamber. My question is why there is no justice for the poor in Sierra Leone. Because of time, those are the messages I can read. Maybe you might just want to respond to the question that he asked about why is it that the injustice system, basically, in Sierra Leone?
So to the first contributor there, that's what the theme of this conference is: protect Sierra Leone. Okay. Right? We want to, after the conference, we're going to really push to get people to understand that this is the only land that we have. Right? If we destroy it, we've destroyed ourselves. And we really need to work together. This is collective action. This is not the Ministry of the Environment doing it by itself. Mm-hmm. It's collective action, all of society working together to protect Sierra Leone. Okay. About the laws don't work if they're selective. When we, again, demolition, I think, should be a last resort. What we really want to do is address these at the root, so we don't get to the demolitions. Because demolitions are not something that we do because we enjoy doing it. Demolition means that you're destroying something that someone else has built. But it's a last resort if someone is doing something that is going to harm the public interest. And from the Ministry of Environment's point of view and our agencies, demolitions would not work, or we want the public at large, we want to take them along when we do these. It doesn't work if we're doing it selectively, right? So the demolitions are about public interest. Take for example, people go build in disaster-prone areas, right? If there is a disaster, it's not going to check what your bank account is, what party you are in, what position you had. We were all here what happened at Motor
2017.
Yeah. And in many cases, what people are playing with is maybe 10, 15 times worse than what we saw at Motor.
I'm not interjecting, but it will surprise you that I went there recently and you see that people have begun building again in the area. The very area the government had said no one should go to.
Even away
they
from
started raising foundations there.
Exactly, and we need to address. Again, it all requires resources.
I know.
But that's why we're trying to deal with this at the roots, so that we have the resources to really address these problems. Because we don't want to wait until there's another disaster. When disasters happen, they don't care, if you were a minister, if you lead some parastatal, or if you're, you're a fisherman, right? It doesn't. The disasters don't differentiate. Yeah. So what that means is that our actions to try to prevent these disasters from happening should not be differentiating. It should be across the board. Otherwise, it doesn't work, and the public will see it.
Right. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Minister. It's always a pleasure hearing from you. I mean, I tell people environment is my beat, so I tend to be quite passionate when I discuss these things.
More reason why I had to leave you to enjoy yourself this morning.
Yes, indeed. We wish you well with the conference. We hope indeed that we see better reforms going forward.
Thank you.